Hey kids, Flexing Teacher Weber here. Yesterday we started talking about square numbers, and essentially a square number is just a number that forms a square. Today we're going to start looking at square roots. Now, using the same idea we did yesterday, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a little square and I'm going to build squares, larger squares with it. So if I took this little square, I could take 4 of those little squares to form another square. Now the area of this square is 4. And when we're talking about the square root of a number, the square root is just the side length of a square. So in this particular case, the side length of this square is 2 units long. So the side length of this square is 2. And we call the side length of a square the square root of a square. Now there's a symbol for square root. It looks like a division symbol. So if I was to say the square root of 4, well, you would say the square root of 4 equals 2. The square root means the side length of a square. So I'm going to underline this right here. The square root of a number is the side length of a square. That's a really important piece of information. Basically, if a square has an area of 4 units, then the square root is the side length of 2. And we talked about how the square root symbol is like a division symbol. The square root of 4 is 2. That symbol right here is the symbol for square root. Now sometimes you'll see this as the symbol for square root. Sometimes it'll look like this. Oops, I gotta switch over to my pen. Sometimes square root will look like this with a little 2 in the corner, indicating that it's the square root symbol, because there's other kinds of roots. There's cube roots. And then sometimes you'll see a square root symbol with a variable in it. That also means square root. So those are some other ways you can show the square root symbol, but usually it just looks like that. Okay. So all of the square roots on the page I got you to learn yesterday. So yesterday I got you to learn all the square numbers from 1 to 20. So I wanted you to know 1 times 1 is 1. 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. 16, 25. I wanted you to go all the way up to knowing 20 squared is 20 times 20, which is 400. Now, today if you look, it also has the square roots on here. The square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. So you have to know all those as well, all the way up to 20, or all the way up to 400. The square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 36 is 6, and so on. You need to know all the way up to the square root of 400 is 20. So you need to know all of those square roots. Now, essentially, when I say square root, or if I say square root of 36, you would say 6. But you also need to know that that means that if I have a square with an area of 36 units, that the side length of that square is 6. So all the square roots on this page are exact square roots, which means they're not decimals, they are not fractions, they are exact square roots. So for example, a square with an area of 81 units would have a side length of exactly 9, or a square root of exactly 9. And that's what this shows right here. The square root of 81 equals 9, and that is an exact number. That's not an estimate, that's not an approximate, that is an exact answer. So all of the numbers on this page that you see here are exact numbers. And again, you need to know the square numbers from 1 all the way to 20 squared. And you need to know the square roots all the way from the square root of 1, 4, 9, 16, all these what we call perfect squares, all the way up to knowing the square root of 400. So you need to know everything on this page, but I won't expect you to have these ones memorized. Doesn't mean you still can't learn them, but all the other ones on this page I want to have you memorize. Okay? Now, You can use a calculator to find a square root. Every calculator is different. There are usually two methods depending on the calculator. So with the calculator that you have, sometimes if you look at number 1, you have to press the square root symbol on the calculator that looks like that. And like I said, sometimes the square root symbol on your calculator, it might have an X in it, and sometimes the square root symbol on your calculator might have a little 2 up in the corner like that. So certain square root symbols are different. But some calculators you have to press the square root symbol first and then enter the number that you want to find the square root of and then press equals. For some calculators, you enter the number that you want to find the square root of and then you press the square root symbol. So depending on the kind of calculator you have, it'll work differently. But I want you to sort of try to figure that out with whatever calculator you have. And also, all phones and the calculators on, if you have an iPhone or whatever, or an iPad, there's a calculator with a square root symbol on that. And I'll actually send out, or I'll try to send out a picture of what it looks like on my phone. Now, a couple other things here. A perfect square will always have an exact square root that is a whole number. Okay, so going back to this page, all the numbers on this page are perfect squares, and all of their square roots are whole numbers, right? They're not decimals. So a perfect square will always have an exact square root that is a whole number. Now, a number that is not a perfect square will have an approximate square root that's a decimal number. So on this first video, we're only going to focus on exact square roots. In the next video, we're going to start estimating square roots. So last thing I want to do in this video here, let's look at an application of square roots. What is the side length of this square? Is it exact or approximate? So this square has an area of 144 centimeters squared. Now what that means is you could take 144 squares that have side lengths of 1 centimeter, and 144 squares like that would fit in this entire larger square. So this square has an area of 144 centimeters squared. And you've been asked to find the side length of this square. Well, this distance would be the side length. Now, if you think back to what we've been talking about squares and square roots, when I'm asked to find the side length of a square, what I'm trying to find is the square root. So when I'm asked to find the side length, I'm really being asked to find the square root. So what I want to find in this question is the square root of 144. And if I go back to my perfect square page, over here you can see that the square root of 144 is 12. So that means that this answer is 12, which means the side length of this square, this distance from here to here, would be 12 centimeters long. Now, since that is a perfect square root, it came from this page, it's a perfect square, we were asked, is this exact or approximate? Well, since it's a perfect square, this is going to be an exact answer. And that means all the sides of this square would be 12 centimeters long, because the definition of a square is that all sides are exactly the same length. So hopefully you have an idea of what square roots are now. In the next video, I'm going to focus on how you do estimating of square roots, and it might actually take 2 videos to do that, so we'll see how long that takes. But that gives you an idea of what square roots are. If I say square root, you say that's the side length of a square. Flexing Teacher Weber, out.